All right, so thank you for tuning in to Jump at the Bit. I am Kyle Edwards, of course, and hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great day. And this episode, I'm going to talk about the NBA as the regular season comes to an end on Sunday, which then leads into the play-in tournament, which starts on Tuesday. But I'll talk about the play-in tournament more probably early next week. But I kind of just want to look at the end of the regular season, I guess like the standings and possible playoff matchups and how interesting that may look. Now I will, I guess, briefly talk playing on this just for, letting you know the teams that are in it and I guess what may be interesting about it or whatever. But, we'll just see kind of where the episode goes and the direction I go in. But before we get into that, just had to say real quick, I don't know if you saw the, breaking news on ESPN or whatever, but I guess yesterday, or was it early Saturday morning, Dwayne Haskins was working out South Florida with, Pittsburgh Steelers teammates and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, he was hit by a car and he lost his life. And, of course, taking the sports element out of it, for a guy that was only 24 years old. I mean, it's tough news to hear because I guess now bringing it back to the sports aspect of it. He was drafted out of Ohio State, came with a lot of promise, had a couple of rough years in Washington, and whatever the reason may have been, didn't work out there. He signed the deal with the Steelers, and it seemed like with Tomlin and those guys in Pittsburgh, with Ben Roethlisberger moving on, Haskins was in play for the starting job with Mitch Trubisky and who was the other guy they have there? Mason Rudolph. That's who it is. So, though it seemed like he was in a good position to, have a second chance in a new environment and hopefully realize the potential that he had. But unfortunately, life taken away much too soon. So I just want to start it off by saying, thoughts and prayers go to his family and all that. And I mean, it's tough. But like I said, just want to say that before I got into the episode. So, like I said, if you hadn't heard, Dwayne Haskins, Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, was killed. So it was Saturday morning. He got struck by a vehicle after his workout down in South Florida. All right, so with that, go ahead and get into the purpose of the episode. Like I said, talking about the NBA and looking at the regular season coming to an end. Standings wise, I mean, for the most part, we know the 6 playoff teams in each conference right now, and we know the 4 play-in tournament teams in each conference as well. There can still be a little bit of jockeying for position, but for right now, basically, the Heat will most likely win the East, and I mean the Suns won the West like weeks ago, so that we know. We know like Memphis is going to be the 2 seed out west, which is going to play an interesting part here in a second. Golden State, Dallas will be 3-4 in whatever order. Then you have Utah, Denver, 5-6, whichever order, as they're tied right now. East, like I said, Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly. Those 3 teams can finish anywhere from 2 to 4. That's still up in the air. I mean, it looks like the Bucks will probably be the 2 seed. Celtics most likely will be the 3. because Philly has a back-to-back, and Philly would have to win both sides of the back-to-back to leap the Celtics. And with the Celtics playing Memphis on Sunday, Memphis is already locked into the 2 seed, so that game's probably going to be a bunch of bench guys playing. And the Celtics will know by then whether they need to win the game for the 3 seed and all this kind of stuff. So that's going to be a game that's going to be worth watching to see if there's still any importance there. And Raptors, who, along with the Celtics, probably the hottest team in the East, as for most of this year, the Raptors were seen as a lock for a play-in team. But they've blown past Charlotte, Atlanta, Cleveland, Brooklyn, and now Chicago, where Toronto's now safely in as the 5 seed. And we've been hearing some reports from some teams about, vaccination statuses in terms of playing in Toronto because Canada's rules, whatever. And I mean, we know, I guess Matisse Thybulle for the Sixers is unvaccinated, so as it stands right now, Philly would play Toronto in the first round series. This means Thybulle could only play in Philly, but I mean, Thybulle it's not like it's Joel Embiid, so Philly should feel comfortable with that. But Philly does have their own issues because James Harden, I mean, this is one of the several reasons why I'm not a big James Harden fan. But now we're starting to see a lot of people pointing to his performance in the past few games and trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And I think I heard somebody bring up that, maybe he's not feeling it in Philly or whatever. And it just makes me roll my eyes because we keep getting these guys who, media people and all stuff, make superstars. And now they feel like they're in positions to call their shots wherever they go. James Harden, coming out of college was Oklahoma City with that great young group, KD, Russ, Ibaka, stuff like that. Didn't happen, didn't work there. He's been to Houston where he played with like Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, guys like that. Didn't work there, worked his way out. The whole thing where he like put on weight or whatever, gets to Brooklyn. From all that we were told, Brooklyn was where he wanted to be until he didn't want to be there. Now he gets to Philly. They first get there, they win a couple of games against trash teams, and then it's like, oh, I'm just here with Joel Embiid, we're gonna do. But now that they've struggled against good teams, all of a sudden people are saying that he's maybe not feeling it as much. I think there was a loss where Doc Rivers made a comment and people were like, he was directing that towards James Harden, which he didn't like. And I'm just like, look, for a guy in James Harden who, for all of his offensive prowess, I guess, even though a lot of that is skewed because with older rules in the NBA, James Harden took full advantage of a lot of the flopping that was allowed by him and some other guys on offense, where he could go to the free throw line, like 20 times a night and pad his point total. But what we're seeing is on a lot of nights when that doesn't work for him, he's kind of shoots a poor percentage. Now, on those nights when he's hitting from the outside, yes, he's a tough guy to play against. But it seems like more often than not now, teams that dedicate a guy defensively to him, you can take Harden out of his game pretty easily now. He's not that guy from Oklahoma City who would come in off the bench, blow by guys, get to the rim, dunk, and all that kind of stuff. That's not him. Hasn't been him for a couple of years now. Now he's more of you kick it to him on the wing, the ball pretty much stops there with him for a little bit, does some stuff between his legs, step back kind of stuff. And since he's not as proficient with that, you're starting to see the struggles that usually happen to him come playoff time. So now a team in Philly where, remember, when it was just Embiid and all these questions about Ben Simmons, a lot of people were like, they think Philly could put it together because of how dominant Joel Embiid was. But now you added in Harden, and some people out there said that they were going to be the new Shaq and Kobe, which was stupid to begin with. But now we're seeing why Harden hasn't had the playoff success that a lot of people would assume he would have had based on his ability offensively. So Philly is a team that, if they go up against Toronto, would I be shocked if Toronto upset them in the first round? I guess I'd have to be a little bit, because if you look at Toronto is a smaller team, and you would think Joel Embiid would dominate down low against them. But we have seen Embiid at times in almost like a defiant type of way, completely disregard the low post and chill on the perimeter. If he does that against a team like Toronto, that's going to sway the series in a big way in Toronto's favor. Because where Toronto has the upper hand on Philly is they have a lot of guys that are, I mean, you watch the Toronto plays, it seems like their whole lineup is like between 6'6" and 6'9", except for Fred VanVleet, who's a short guy. But they have a lot of guys who, positionally, defensively, they can switch a lot and feel fine with everything. That's what I'm saying with Embiid. If he plays down low, that gives them a big problem. But like I said, Embiid can hover around the outside a lot. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. Boston, like I said, if it comes down to the point where Sunday's game matters to them, if they win, they can get the 2 seed. Do they go for it and risk, which I put in quotes, because a lot of people, with the teams in Miami, Milwaukee, Boston, may, have been putting out there that you don't want to see Brooklyn in the first round, which I guess because, with Kevin Durant, Kyrie both being offensively gifted, that you're in for a tough series against those two, because if you struggle someone offensively, Durant's the type who could turn around and drop 50 and make the game much closer and a series much closer than maybe, it should be or could be. Because for as great as Brooklyn has the potential to be offensively, defensively, they're kind of a mess right now. So, if I am a Miami, Milwaukee, or Boston, I think Milwaukee or Boston more so. I don't think the thought of Brooklyn as a potential first-round series is that big of a deal, because Milwaukee and Boston can both play defensively and both have guys who have enough length and athleticism to, cover a Durant and not necessarily shut him down, but at least make it difficult for him. That's the biggest thing when you come play against Brooklyn. Milwaukee, you clearly have a Giannis who can go out there and, harass Durant. You also have Middleton who can, defend against him. With Kyrie, you have a Drew Holiday. And for Boston, when you're going up against Durant, you have Tatum, Brown, Kyrie, you have Marcus Smart, even Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench. So, like I said, you may not necessarily shut those two down, but the key for beating Brooklyn is limit the effect of the other guys. So you can't let Patty Mills go off for, 15, 18, 20 points where he's knocking down open threes. You can't let that happen. Let's see who else. I mean, there's some guys like, Cam Thomas, who, young guy off the bench. In a series, he can probably give you like a game where he goes out of his mind and could drop, 15, 18 for you. And I think the question, like I said, with Brooklyn's going to be secondary scoring outside of Durant and Kyrie. Who can they depend on? And, what teams would give them the biggest trouble? You got Chicago, who's now the 6th seed, and seems like they're in a place where, they kind of, I think they've lost confidence from earlier in the season where they were doing so well, looking like a, top 3 team in the East. And then it seemed like with the Caruso injury, something completely changed in them. Lonzo Ball as well factors into that because they brought in those 2 guys to be wing, like depth defensively, so that you could free up LaVine and DeRozan to kind of play freely on offense and not have to worry about turning around and guarding a Tatum, a Brown, Butler, something like that. So Chicago's free falling, but luckily there's not like another week or 2 left in the season because they would be a team that easily would have fallen into the play-in tournament, and probably a team like Brooklyn would have found their way out swapping with Chicago. So like I said, playing, you have Brooklyn, Cleveland, Atlanta, Charlotte. I mean, Cleveland was such a feel-good story early in the year, but now the wheels have completely fallen off on that team, and it looks like, they look like a team that, right now they'd play Brooklyn in the first leg of the play-in. You would probably pick Brooklyn in that matchup, so Brooklyn will probably be the 7th seed, and then you're looking at Cleveland against Atlanta or Charlotte. You would probably take Atlanta or Charlotte against Cleveland, unfortunately, because like I said, it was a great story with Cleveland early on, but they had their own injury issues, and that's not to take anything away from their season, because for them, this was kind of this is like a major building block for them, because Cleveland was seen as a city, was a team, an organization that people were saying they can't put a winner together without LeBron James. So now this season, I guess all those years of futility, the draft picks and all that kind of stuff, finally worked out. They have Evan Mobley, who's a young guy with them. Darius Garland. They had their big free agent splash with Jared Allen, who was a big part of their season. I know he got injured a couple weeks ago. I don't think he's back yet. Honestly, I don't think so. But they are an interesting team, though. Who's to say for the play-in format they can't put together? Well, if they were to upset a Brooklyn, get into the playoffs that way. But if they lost to Brooklyn, if they couldn't put it together for one night against Atlanta or Charlotte and get their way into the regular playoff bracket, I wouldn't be surprised by it. And that's the thing with those 4 teams. I guess the only team, if you're looking at Brooklyn, Cleveland, Atlanta, Charlotte, the only team that if they didn't come out of that play-in that would be a surprise would be Brooklyn. Like I said, Durant, Kyrie are the best 2 players out of those 4 teams, so you would think they would have the easiest chance of coming out of that. Atlanta versus Charlotte, if that happens to be the 9-10 matchup, would be an interesting game for me. But like I said, break down the matchups more next week before the play-in tournament happens on Tuesday. That way we'll know who's actually playing who. Looking out west real quick, like I said, Phoenix overwhelmingly is the best team out west, and you'd have to say best team in the league right now. And what they did without Chris Paul, give them a lot of credit. They kept the train moving, they kept the dominance up. Now that Chris Paul's back, you have to be thinking about them making another run at the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Hopefully this time, if they were to get back there. they would be able to win it, because we know so many times in sports you lose in a championship aspect one year. It's just so so difficult to get back there the following year. And like I said, Phoenix is the odds-on favorite to come out of the West, obviously. Memphis is a team that, you have to root for. They're a young group that's come together. They played like 25 games, I think, without Ja Morant, and they've gone like 20-5 without him. And a lot of people were wondering, with Morant going down, what would that do to such a young group? But they have been able to put wins together. They put together quality wins without him. So you would have to pin them as obviously the second best team in the West. But that's not to say it's going to be an easy road for them, because we know Golden State, who's dealing with injuries right now, with Steph Curry, who's probably going to be back. We already know that James Wiseman isn't coming back, which I guess depending on who they would play in the West would be a big deal. But if Golden State can get, Curry and Clay, basically, if they get those two going at the same time, Golden State becomes that much more of a dangerous team. Because with this time, especially with with most of the season where all three of those guys were never on the court together, we've seen the growth of guys like Jordan Poole and Peyton Jr. and all that. So those guys were basically thrust into bigger roles than probably Steve Kerr would have had for them. But with that, gives them confidence that in a playoff series, if Curry and Thompson are struggling from the perimeter or struggling to make baskets in general, they can hopefully, lean on Poole and those type of guys to come in and give them a spark. Let's see. They got like Dallas, who I gotta say has been a little bit of a surprise, because when you go up against Dallas, you already know what you're in for, and that's, Doncic being ball dominant, being the main guy, because he has to be, with no secondary star there right now. I mean, his second best player is probably Dinwiddie, and they're going to pick and roll you to death, because with that, Doncic can either get to the rim if you sag off of him, if you try to fight over the screen. He can do the same. I guess I was trying to say, if you sag off of the screen, he can step back, hit a three. You try to, double him off of this pick. He's got great vision, great passing ability. He can throw a lob to a Dwight Powell or whoever who set the screen. Or if you rotate too far, he can find Finney Smith in the corner or Dinwiddie or whatever. So Doncic is just big headache to deal with, because he's so skilled on the ball and has great vision and is a great playmaker and all that. Biggest question for Dallas, I guess, would have to be matchups. I mean, right now they'd be matched up against Utah. Will be Utah or Denver. If it was Denver, that would be interesting. You'd get the Joker versus Doncic. Great matchup. Two guys who are in the MVP conversation. I mean, at least to me, they'd have to be. And like I said, with a team like Utah, I think for Utah, this is going to be a probably final stand with this current group. And by current group, I'm talking about, the Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert trio. At least for me, before this season, I feel like that group, well, I guess we'll take Quinn Snyder out of it. We'll look at, I guess, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell pairing. I think the two of them have kind of run its course. They're going to, every year be 4 or 5 seed, win you about 50 games. But to me, those two are never going to be a duo where they go into the playoffs. I'm going to be like, that's a team that's a title contender. Only because offensively, Rudy Gobert doesn't really give you much other than offensive rebounding, which is a big part of the game, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times that means offensively Donovan Mitchell controls the ball. And when games get tight late, it becomes Donovan Mitchell going 1-on-5 against, the opposing team, trying to make step back threes or deep threes or, tough fall away jumpers, deep twos, that type of thing. And if he's not making them, because there are times where he can hit those shots and it's demoralizing, but if he's not hitting those, then it puts so much pressure on Utah to be perfect defensively to keep the game, scoring low enough that if Mitchell's off a little bit, you're giving him a longer period of time to find his shot. Now, they do have offensive players that can hurt you. Jordan Clarkson, who is your classic bench guy with the green light because coming off the bench, he's your best scorer. That can help you, but also hurt you a lot because he's a guy who, if he's off, he could go through like a 5-minute stretch where he'll take like 8 shots, brick them all, and now your whole offensive flow has been killed. But like I said, if he's on, great. They have Royce O'Neal, who is a deep threat. He's also the guy who takes on usually the toughest wing defensive assignment. So, he expends a lot of energy on the defensive end of the floor. But he is a guy, like I said, if Mitchell, gets too much attention offensively, he can kick it out to O'Neal, and O'Neal can knock down a 3-point shot. So, like I said, this is a team that if they were to go against Dallas in the first round, lose, I think you would have to see changes in the offseason. And whether that's, I don't know. Do you look at trading Gobert? What do you get for Gobert? Do you do the unthinkable and move on from Donovan Mitchell? Do you maybe take some of those secondary pieces and hopefully put them together for a deal for like a third star, even though I think the super team 3-star thing is kind of dying because a lot of teams are being hamstrung by those 3 that they can't put enough pieces around them. So I think we're going back more to a system in the NBA where you have great duos in places, because you look at it, Booker, Paul, Phoenix, Golden State, you'd have Clay and Steph. Draymond is a big name in the league, but I don't think people look at him on the same level as those two, even though he's very important to Golden State. So maybe that's kind of a formula Utah goes with, where they have Gobert, Mitchell. Well, actually, take that back. Gobert's. Okay, let me see how to put this. So for Utah, I think for me, for them to get to that next level, if you look at Donovan Mitchell as Steph, they need to find the Clay to Steph and move Gobert down to the Draymond Green on their team. Who that person is, I don't know right now. But that's one way Utah can go. So it'd be interesting to see which way they decide to go with it. Could Utah put together a package to send to Washington for Bradley Beal? I don't know. Who's another guy that could get moved for the right price? I don't know. Beal was just the name that came to my head right away, but that's the type of thing I think Utah would need to find for them to get to the next level. If they can't find that, then they would have to break up the Gobert-Mitchell dynamic and start over with player X to replace one of them. My guess would be they would try to move Gobert and keep Mitchell, but that's just me. Denver, like I said, what is there to say about Denver? It's the Jokic show because there's no Jamal Murray. There's no Michael Porter Jr. If they had those two, they would they'd probably be higher up in the Western standings, number one. Number two, they would probably have been my biggest threat to Phoenix. But unfortunately, without those two, I just can't, really say much about them right now. But that's not to say that with Jokic's ability to give you like a couple of nights where he can, put up 30, 15, and 12, it's not to say they can't upset some team in the first round. So they will be a fun team to watch for sure. The pressure, of course, is going to be on Aaron Gordon to elevate his game come the playoffs, or Will Barton. Guys like, they have talented players there. It's just that Jamal Murray injury is just killing them right now. And hopefully he can come back at some point. Whether he could, miraculously do it this year, or if he comes back next year, hopefully he can have a healthy season next year. But I would love to see, this version of Jokic paired with the bubble version of Jamal Murray. Get that going for a couple of years and see what happens. I think magic could be made there. West play-in tournament, you have Minnesota, the Timberwolves. Great story there, as it seems like they finally have figured it out after several years of, ineffectiveness and lottery picks and all that. You got the Clippers, who managed their season without Kawhi Leonard. Paul George, most of it, as Paul George is back now, and you see the effect there. He's raised their defensive level, and he gives them a legitimate number one guy. So they're a team that, could make it difficult for one of the top seeds in the world. I guess right now they literally would be 7 or 8. So Phoenix and Memphis. If I was the Clippers, you would want to see Memphis, which would mean they would have to win their first play-in game to get the 7th seed. Take your chances with Memphis and just hope that Paul George outshines Ja Morant. And then you have the Pelicans and the Spurs as your last two teams in the play-in. For the Pelicans, no Zion all year. They put it together. I mean, yes, they're 8 games under 500 right now. Not your typical playoff team, but hey, they made the play-in tournament. It's there to give more teams opportunity. There you go. The Spurs. They're the Spurs. They were not planning on competing this year, but because of certain circumstances with a certain team in LA that I'm avoiding talking about on this episode, they found the opportunity to get back into the play-in tournament, took full advantage of it, and you got to give them credit for it. They have a rising star, DeJounte Murray, so it'd be great to see him in a play-in tournament type system where see if he can put together back-to-back games, get San Antonio into the playoffs, and then probably get annihilated by Phoenix, but at least get him on a playoff stage. That's what it is, with these younger teams, Pelicans, Spurs, well, not necessarily younger teams, but inexperienced teams in terms of playoffs. Get them in, even if they get demolished by Phoenix or Memphis or whatever. Get them there, then catapult that to next year, hopefully build off of it. But yeah, so that's basically my quick rundown right there of where we stand right now with just this weekend left in the regular season, and then the playoffs will be finally here. Like I said, before the play-in tournament, obviously we'll talk about that more, and then we will know playoff matchups after that. So that'll be an interesting thing to see who matches up with who. Which teams come out of the play-in, which ones will have the biggest threat to one of the top seeds in the East or the West. Obviously looking at Brooklyn for the East, and I think with Paul George back, well, actually Minnesota and the Clippers could give top teams a hard time. Minnesota, with their youth and athleticism, and Karl Anthony Towns being a big man that not a lot of teams really have big men to necessarily cover him because of his ability to stretch the floor as well as be a problem down low. And like I said, with the Clippers, they're a completely different team now with Paul George back. Of course, they would love to have Kawhi back as well, but Paul George, as we saw with his years in Indiana, is a guy who has his moments in the playoffs. So the NBA playoffs are always great for me, and I'm definitely interested to see what happens. Waiting to see, of course, who my Celtics get in the first round. Obviously, I'd be pulling for Chicago because, like I said earlier, Chicago is not in a great space right now. Like I said, confidence is kind of gone, and I think that would be a perfect team for them to get in the first round, especially with them dealing with the Rob Williams injury, although it seems like Rob Williams may come back a little sooner than thought, but I would still count him out for the first round and would want him to be ready to go second round when you're looking at a possible matchup against Milwaukee, or I guess Philly's still in play there. So that's when you would really need Rob Williams to go, with Embiid in Philly, or Giannis, for Rob Williams to be another athletic big to have around the hoop to try to deter Giannis when he makes his drives to the rim. So it may be the end of the season, but there's still some stuff to be figured out, and this weekend's going to be crazy in the NBA, and I will be watching a lot of games, at least as much as I possibly can. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please let me know. You can obviously do that by hitting the like button, share it with somebody, or subscribing, or going over to Twitter. Follow me at Chompin' Podcast. Definitely love that as well. So enjoy your day wherever you are. Hopefully it's nice out. If it's not, still enjoy the day, because hey, another day beats the alternative. And I say that once again with thoughts and prayers to Dwayne Haskins, because it's a terrible situation that happened with him. So just remember that. And yeah, life is just unpredictable like that, and you just gotta deal with whatever you're going through and just cherish it and embrace it for what it is. That's all you can do. So be safe out there. God bless, of course. And I will catch you in the next episode. All right, I'm out. Have a good one.